Welcome to the ChangeMakers in CRE, a podcast by Re-Leased.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ChangeMakers in CRE. My name is Tom Willis. I'm the founder and CEO of Re-Leased, and today we're lucky enough to be joined by Aviva Sonenreich, who from the Warehouse Hotline. Welcome along, Aviva. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you all reaching out, and I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm a little bit starstruck. I know you've got a huge amount of followers on social media, and you're an expert at this sort of thing. So it should be a great chat. Do you want to just kick us off by telling us about Warehouse Hotline, the thinking behind it, how you got started, and just a bit about yourself? That'd be great.
Sure. So I have a company here in Denver, Colorado called the Warehouse Hotline. It is the world's only warehouse exclusive brokerage. I realized recently that commercial real estate has little to no branding on a good day. And in a sea of companies that are people's last names with color schemes, I realized that a brand might be a really strong differentiator on the business side, which it has been. So
I can't think of one. I'm just trying to think if there's one other example. I can't think of one other example that's not a last name right now.
It's the commercial industry, commercial real estate is pretty antiquated from top to bottom. And so I really enjoy exploring where I can literally break boundaries and then rebuild something that works better for modern day times, because the way commercial real estate was found, it's a different world than the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even 2010, it's a different world. So it's fun to push our industry.
Yeah.
See what we can do with it.
Yeah, 100%. So you think that, and obviously building the business on the fact that it's moving away from long lunches and relationships and just perhaps over whiskey, and actually building a brand and being known for that, being known for something and standing out. Just can you tell us about, I guess, some of the impact or the outputs you're seeing from taking a different approach?
Sure. I mean, it's just been overwhelming when it comes to online leads. I used to run my company with Google Ads, and it was just my last name, and it worked, but organic ads were virtually non-existent. And then I noticed when I put exactly what we did in the title of the company, people understood it a lot better. And as a result, organic growth has been significant. So
yeah, it must be a nice feeling to be able to not be handcuffed or be able to wean yourself off the paid advertising of Google and perhaps Facebook, because I kind of think of them as like the world's biggest landlords now. Basically, like they control the domain. They're the landlords of the internet, but they're way better at pricing than a typical landlord or like a property landlord, because they know exactly how much it's worth to you, and they'll charge you just up into the amount that you can't afford to pay it anymore, and they'll just do that en masse. So it must be very liberating to be away from that.
Oh yeah, hey, there's a time and a place for everything, and advertising is a powerful tool. And I'm still learning. I by no means feel like I have even touched the tip of the iceberg. I really feel like our industry as a whole has no idea of the power of the internet. And so I'm just excited to start exploring it.
Yeah. And I think you've obviously, you say Warehouse Hotline, you've obviously chosen a niche or a niche, depending on who's listening and how we want to pronounce it. And if commercial real estate is antiquated, I think industrial and warehousing is probably right at the bottom end of that scale too. So why choose that sector? What was it about that attracted you to the industry there?
Sure. So my grandparents came to America in 1950, fleeing Nazi Germany. And they, aside from, this is a true immigrant story, working endlessly, saving. About 20 years in, they bought their first property. It was a duplex. They lived on one side. Very typical immigrant story.
Cool.
And my grandparents went on to have a really nice career in residential real estate and hospitality through owning motels. And what my dad realized, having parents in this residential sector, was that it was 24/7. And my dad would always say every night at dinner, the landline would ring and his dad would pick up the phone and walk out the door.
Shower's broken or taps leaking or something along those lines, or it could anything. Right? Yeah.
Anything. And so my dad went on to start working in commercial real estate, specifically with warehouses. Prior to 2010, where we live in Denver, Colorado, warehouses were really not a glamorous product type. They were the butt end of real estate. But in 2010, Colorado became the first state to recreationally legalize marijuana.
Yep.
And the dynamic of our warehouse industry changed literally overnight. Mm-hmm. But then following the cannabis industry was the e-commerce industry, and user habits have changed so significantly, even from the beginning of 2020 until now, May of 2022, that warehouses have become this glamorized product type that people need more and more. Investors are realizing maybe their A-class office might not actually be as good as an investment as a C-class warehouse. And so I really honestly I wish I had a story where I came up with this whole thing myself, but my old man's been involved with warehousing in Denver since the 80s. And in working with him for the past 7 or so years, realized I love it. And leaning into the niche of warehousing is where I decided to take us.
That's great. Well, what I love about that though is that you took the platform from your grandparents and your parents, and you've put your distinct personal spin on it, which we'll jump into as well. You've actually taken something and grown it to something completely new, which is, I think, really inspirational. I really love that. And an incredibly interesting story. I actually forgot about the cannabis industry that came up in Colorado. I remember when we have an office there, and when I first drove in from the airport, you could almost smell it down the freeway with all those big coming through with all the different warehouses that line the freeway in from the airport. But it has actually, I noticed it changed again. I was there last week and it's changed again, as has a lot of industrial warehousing in the last few years with the rise in delivery and the COVID shift that's happened there. But anyway, I would like to jump into the next thing. This is in terms of, obviously you've got a great brand, you've got your name out there, but one way that you're pushing yourself, which is totally unique from anything I've seen before, is on TikTok and social media. And you have over 1 million followers on TikTok, which is a huge number. It's actually, it just so happens to be significantly higher than the number of people that listen to this podcast. It's a little fun fact. But could you just tell us around how you got into that, and why TikTok and what that means to you and how you create content? It's just, I think it's super interesting to explore that.
Sure. I love me. If I weren't in commercial real estate, I would be a marketer. I love media. I'm just fortunate that I can combine my two passions and put them together and maybe close a deal once in a while. But in March of 2020, the phone stopped ringing, completely. And I'm just a hyper person. I needed something to do. And I have a very, very adorable one-eyed cat who was a kitten at the time. And so I started making TikToks about the cat, learning the algorithm, learning the platform. And
can we have the cat's name? Is it something to do with having one eye, or is it just a regular name?
It's Henry with an eye. Okay. Anyway, it's Henry.
One eye.
Yeah. But I had a friend, after a few months of just really playing with and practicing with the platform, I had a friend call me and say, "What are you doing? There's so much competition with a cat, wherein with your profession, you have zero competition." And that's when the light bulb went off and I started talking about real estate on TikTok. And what I realized really fast was that people want to learn about this on the internet, but real estate in general and commercial real estate specifically is just such a gate-kept industry. There isn't a lot of good information about it on the internet. Podcasts like these are amazing, if and when people find it, but these multi-trillion-dollar industries are very, very much lacking when it comes to consumable content, and
they've benefited on the secrets and being opaque for many decades.
Correct, absolutely, and unfortunately for those who've been benefiting from it, which isn't far off from my family has been, but the reality of the internet is that somebody is going to break down the barriers. And it's not just going to be one person, it'll be many. And I'd like to be hand in hand with those people because that's the reality of the internet and what it does for us.
That's fantastic. Could you run me through, for those, I imagine actually, there's 1 million people that follow you, but I imagine there's a few people listening on the podcast that don't know anything about TikTok or haven't seen your videos yet. Can you run me through typically what's the length of a video? What's the sort of content you cover? How do you make it engaging? Love to know a bit more about that.
Sure. So, a TikTok video is anywhere from 5 seconds to 3 minutes. And creating a TikTok is all about keeping your viewer watching and engaged the entire time. And the funny thing about TikTok is that what I just said, right? The point of the TikTok is to keep the viewer engaged and watching. It is absolutely no different than any other platform. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. These are platforms where algorithmically, if the algorithm notices multiple people are staying on a post for a longer period of time, or engaging with a post for a longer period of time, it's going to push that post's visibility. Why? Because people like it. And that's why people are on these platforms, is to see content that they want to consume. So the point of a TikTok is to create an engaging piece of content that keeps people involved and watching. And so while there is a learning curve, the platform is just an incredible way to spread awareness and meet people. These apps are actually geolocal. So I post a TikTok and the first group of people who see it are in my city. And then it goes out from there. And I have met so many incredible brokers, owners, anybody with any real estate problem you could imagine I've talked to. And there's a vast world of people out there who could be your potential next deal, next client, next partner, and a platform that's so widely adapted like TikTok is an amazing vessel to get you there.
The reach is unthinkable, really. If you're thinking about what would have been before, the advertising or the brand building that would have been before, which would have, perhaps been an ad on a bus or a billboard somewhere or a little thing in the local newspaper. You might reach tens of thousands of people, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe, but hundreds of thousands or millions is it's in a different league. It's not the same thing. And I imagine that this is still really at the leading edge. But I imagine people will see your success and be inspired by that. And you'll probably see, I don't know, maybe you already have copycats coming after you, but I imagine it's going to inspire a lot of people. What are you happy to share? You've obviously done a lot of content now, and I'm sure you're refining what engages with the viewers the most. Is there a theme that they love the most that they'll stick around for?
Sure. People love relevant or any form of real estate news. They really like the hottest gossip on real estate news and any drama. Oh yeah. They also like like relevant tips. While we transact commercial real estate, I do recognize that a majority of the people consuming our content, they're impacted by real estate, but they're more impacted by residential real estate. So I do a lot of leasing tips, buying tips that can be useful in a residential setting, but also useful in a commercial setting, because I want to help as many people as possible. And the crazy thing is things that you and I might know because we transact real estate daily, people have no idea. Like there's no manual, there's no book. And so people
in commercial, you don't, unless you're in it day to day, if you're a tenant or even sometimes a passive owner, right, you're only going to do certain things. You're only going to sign a lease once every few years. You're only going to do a renewal, or so it's like, how are you going to be as skilled? And it leaves yourself open to someone who knows the tricks on the other side to take advantage of that, right? So it's
sure. And these are some of when you're buying a property, when you're signing a lease, these are some of the biggest if not the biggest transaction you're agreeing to in your life so far. Like you need to know what you're doing, what you're signing. And most people don't. I say that about 85% of the people I deal with do not read their leases. Oh. And that is an issue. You should always read your lease.
Read your lease. Take one thing away from today, read the lease. A very good tip. And just on that, why do you have any? Do you sort of run any other platforms as well? Like I think most people would be familiar on listening here with probably LinkedIn would be the furthest I would go. And actually, I've seen a lot more of this like sort of tip style things come through on Twitter. Actually, I don't know if you use Twitter, but there was I follow one person on there, one profile called Strip Mall Guy. I don't know if you've seen him. It's an anonymous one, but I just think the little tips and inciting traders tips he puts in there are fascinating. That I would never have thought. Like a lot of them I've never thought of. But have you seen that one, Strip Mall Guy? It's worth checking out. It's again another niche or niche, but it's incredible information he shares on that.
I haven't. Twitter is. I need to explore the commercial space on Twitter more.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it's growing. I've noticed it in the last year. It's actually becoming a thing, mostly in the US, but just a lot of the lessons that you see there flow across globally.
Sure.
Yeah.
I do Instagram, Facebook. I have dreams of doing more. I know I need to. I just need an assistant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the most part, it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, but
be like a production company at some point.
Need a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay, and then that's incredibly fascinating. It's so unique, and I think congratulations on doing that and starting something totally new. I think it's incredible. I want to switch just back to property and warehousing. It's obviously the spot you know the most about. Do you have any? I mean, we talked about it on here. There's been a lot of change, massive change, not just in Denver but globally. The pandemic affected everywhere. Do you have any predictions now? It looks there's some if we're sort of moving past COVID. I hope we're moving past COVID. Do you have any sort of predictions to where industrial is going to go, say over the next 5 years?
Next 5 years in industrial. Well, it's already happening. When you drive along your highways, you're going to see large warehouses being built.
You have a name for them, right? I've seen your name. You've got a name for those?
Big sexies?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, early 2000s, smaller warehouses were built for smaller users, small being, we'll say, 1,000 square feet to 75,000 square feet. And 75 was big at the time. In a 2020 and beyond world, the need for these 100,000, 200, 300, 400, 500,000 to 1 million square foot warehouses has come to the forefront. So you're going to see these big sexies all over your highways. And those are your Home Depots, your Costco's. These are big, big retailers who no longer need that big box retail space.
Yep.
They need a big warehouse.
Yep. Do you see, how close to the inner city do you think you'll see, like, do you actually expect to see, like, I guess, like small to mid ones, but like effectively right into behind the main streets somewhere, just for that last mile delivery?
It's interesting. It depends on the city.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's, it really depends on the city and the way that it's laid out. Sometimes it's valuable to have them further away. So, I've heard an argument. Sometimes it's better in a city that has a lot of traffic to have your big warehouses on the outskirts, because it's more efficient for drivers. It's cheaper and more efficient for drivers to be further away, not dealing with the traffic, rather than on the inner city, sitting in it. So it really just depends on.
If you've got a really tight little narrow streets in a small city, like you don't want to see big trucks rumbling through to drop off cargo every day.
Sure. And I will say something we're finding, which I am having conversations about this recently, is the cities, industrial uses. These are not glamorous. These are heavy machinery. This is stuff we need, but it's not pretty. And as a result, we're seeing municipalities trying to eliminate this industrial ground to make their counties more beautiful. But the reality is we need more and more of this industrial ground. Yep. So it wouldn't be the first time the government, maybe in America, wasn't quite up to par with reality, which is a huge issue that we're facing.
Yeah, I don't know. That's probably not limited just to America. I think that's a global thing. But maybe, yeah, no, definitely. And I guess the last thing, a trend I had heard of, but I don't know if it's actually happened. I think it was more of a prediction, was that shopping centers were, traditionally they were, obviously people would go to those shopping centers. A lot of them are struggling. I think there's a lot of ghost shopping centers around, particularly in the United States. But they do have some qualities about them that make them good potentially for industrial, because they obviously have easy to access off on-ramps and they're within driving distance of large metros. So have you seen anything around your area or around your state where shopping centers are being repurposed for industrial? Do you think that's a trend, or is that just a prediction that's not going to come through? Sure.
In terms of, like, we call that adaptive reuse, Denver's different. Denver, where I live, is a thriving, growing city. And so we are not seeing as many deserted shopping centers as, say, like the Midwest. I think they say in the Midwest, a third of shopping centers are deserted, which is like mind blowing.
That's bizarre. You've got beautiful. I went to Cherry Creek there last week when I was there. The shopping center is probably the nicest one I've ever been to. I bought a pair of boots there and got back to New Zealand and realized they were the wrong size, but I have to wear them anyway.
Well, I live 2 blocks from that mall, so if you need a return,
yeah.
Yeah. So you were in Cherry Creek last week, so you understand when I say this area is thriving. And
oh yeah, it's stunning.
I mean, the mall is suffering. You might not be able to tell, but it's not what it used to be.
Seem busy.
Yeah, but yeah, your local shopping mall may very well turn into your local multifamily complex.
Oh yeah.
Your local warehouse, something like you're saying, a new use that is more centered towards now.
Yeah,
because
it's going to be really interesting to see those transitions. Yeah. I think that's the way that real estate's always operated in a way, right? It's just like the use changes and it adapts. Some of it falls away and is no longer usable and has to be replaced. But it's really interesting to see sort of cities and towns adapt and thrive depending on the changing needs of the communities around it. Hey, Aviva, thank you so much. That was really interesting. Really enjoyed it. Thank you for making the time to speak with us, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you all reaching out, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, we'll maybe go meet you at Cherry Creek sometime.
Okay, deal.
Thank you.